The reason we're stopped here now is I just want to go through the geographical importance of why the furnace was built here, yeah? You had a lot of components that influenced it. First of all, you had a sandstone belt coming along here, and predominantly in Partry it's limestone, but there's a strip of sandstone coming along here. Now the furnace we're going to see, if that was built with sandstone, or with limestone, I beg your pardon, it'd crumble after a couple of melts because it won't sustain the heat. So sandstone is way more resilient and it can take higher temperatures, and it was easier to work with. Somebody tell me they prefer to work with sandstone as opposed to limestone. The other element as well is you would have had a lot of woodlands here, oak woodlands, which were hugely important as well for fueling the furnace. And you had bog on the way back towards Shira as well. And then you had your water courses for transport. I'll elaborate on that a bit more, but this direction over here is Westport. You've Tourmacady directly behind me and Shira. Now the iron ore was quarried in Shira, and it would have been brought back along this direction through Borean and Ossel and it landed up here. You have your bog there to the southwest. You have your oak. There are vast quantities of oak in the early 1700s and then you had the River Clune, which was used to transport it by form of a barge that went into Loch Mask. In 1992, I was trying to research it, and this was kind of before internet, everything like that, so it was very hard to research stuff. But I got in touch with a friend of mine over there in Partry, David Roberts, and he put me in touch with a guy down in UCC called Colin Rinn. Colin at the time was writing a book, The Industrial Archaeology of Ireland. Timing was great. But I rang Colin up and I said, Colin, I have an iron smelting furnace, I think dates from the 1700s. And he said to me, no, you don't, you have a lime kiln. I took offence to that, yeah. I said, sorry, Colin, no, I have a lime kiln, definitely. And he still wasn't believing me because he'd been researching this and there was nothing on any databases or any files or anything like that. And again, it was pre-digital, so I took photographs, got them developed, posted them down. When Colin got these photographs, he nearly came down the phone line. He rang me back straight away. About a month later, he came down because his work was in progress with this book and he couldn't believe it, that it was here. It wasn't documented, relatively good structure in good condition and that as well. That's basically the reason it's here and how I've been developing it the last 30 years or so. Well, as you can see here, we have the aforementioned furnace. It's no mean feat of a building at all. The date we have it, I can't really be quoted because the evidence isn't substantial enough, but we're talking in 1738, in around that time. This is your rough pig iron, and that, like, I'm using two hands to lift that again, but they would have been made in pig sand beds, and again I'll elaborate on that a bit more. But to make 1 ton of that, it required 6 tons of charcoal, but to make 1 ton of charcoal you needed 7 tons of oak. So do the maths. To make 1 ton of pig iron you needed 42 tons of oak, which is an incredible amount of timber, yeah, when you weigh it up, really. So there were various processes involved with the furnace here. It wasn't just they'd say, I will go to the furnace today and we make a couple of ton of pig iron. The charcoal had to be made, the turf had to be cut, firing had to be done, and it took a number of days to bring up the heat. So they would have done a melt or a smelt over a number of weeks to keep it going, to keep the temperatures up. The workmen that were working on it, I believe, weren't Irish, they weren't local, they were Scottish. Why they were brought here to do this, and again, the people who built it were unsure of who actually funded it, who was the brains behind it and who were the financiers behind it, is pretty vague as well. So the structure itself, you can see we have 2 arches. This arch to your left is called the bellows arch because you needed huge quantities of air to be pumped in to fire up into the furnace. Now it would have been 2 bellows that were used and operated by a water wheel. The reason for the two bellows, it'd be like a bicycle pedals. You had to have a constant airflow. One bellow wouldn't be enough because it'd be just so it'd be like a bicycle, and it'd be continued air being pumped into it. And the water wheel was operated, there would have been like a canal type ravine coming down here that turned the wheel and that as well. There's a ramp up there and there's a platform up there. So the workmen would have worked on top, loaded everything in. It was done in stages, and that as the firing progressed. Now the hugely important thing about this furnace as well is that the bosh is intact. The bosh is the chimney, and it's like a beehive. It's kind of coned in at the top, and that's very much intact, and that's what Colin Rain was very excited about. A lot of the furnaces, even between here in the UK, even the latter ones, the bosh has fell in. And this arch here is your smelting arch, and there was a fine aperture at the bottom. The structure here as well would have been flagged. You can see the stones coming out, and obviously it would have been a flagged roof, a flagstone roof, because you couldn't have a thatched roof with everything coming up from the top as well, you know. There are various reasons why it was called pig iron. One is because we're rough. We tend to think of pigs kind of rough animals and that, but it's rough state as well. It would have been walked across the field about 100 metres the other side of that field. You have the River Clune, so it would have been put onto a barge-like structure, transported down onto Loch Mask, handled over to Loch Corrib, up to Galway Harbour, and brought across to the Black Country in England, and that where it was made into various things. But it operated for about, they tell me, possibly 120 years just after the famine. So you can imagine, first of all, the amount of produce that came out of it, the amount of iron ore that came out of it, but also the devastation that was done to the landscape. When we think now, when we're so environmentally conscious, the amount of trees and timber that was just totally wiped out to fuel this. It was good in one way. We progressed as people, like the industry, and again, this was the start of the Industrial Revolution, and see where we've developed now, like with all our mobile phones and all these iron ores that come into our phones and everything like that is mined from the ground. So this was the genesis of all of that, of where we are now today.
I wonder, when did it cease to function?
Post the famine, like maybe 1850 there for some reason after that, yeah. Because they would have done a smelt over a number of weeks, let it cool down, then physically get inside, down into the bosh, empty all the ash, all the residue stuff out of it, and start anew again. Because, you know, with turf, there's very little waste from charcoal, very little, but there is a lot of waste from turf, and that you get an awful lot of ash from turf and that as well. But the turf would have been used at the beginning of a fire to start bringing the temperatures up. Once they got it to a certain level, charcoal only would have been added at that stage, yeah. But what binds the whole thing together is your sand, your lime, and bullock's blood was used to wet it instead of water. So the blood from the cattle was used to bind it. After 30 years of it, I'm still passionate about it, because it is progressing somewhat slowly, but the last few years it's kind of moved on at a better pace. Yeah,
certainly see that, and you know, best of luck with it.
Thank you.
And it's a great addition to the whole vernacular heritage of the area. You know, it's fabulous, and
thank you.
Hopefully I'm sure the Geopark can help with publicity around it as well.
That'd be great, yeah.
Working in with what
social media and all that area of it, yeah. It'd be fantastic, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much, yes.
Thank you. Thanks indeed.